The moment of underestimation. The galaxy was vast, with civilizations spanning countless stars. Among them, Earth was considered a speck, an insignificant blip on the galactic map. The inhabitants of this young world, primitive by galactic standards, had only just begun to explore their solar system. They had no interstellar fleet, no advanced weapons that could rival those of the other empires. The mighty galactic leaders, having conquered countless worlds, saw Earth as nothing more than a curiosity, a place to dismiss. But what they didn't know was that Earth's strength was not in its size or resources, it was in its people. The Galactic Empire, a powerful force spanning thousands of systems, had long looked down on the humans. In their eyes, humanity was weak, unable to ever pose a real threat. Their technology was crude, their military forces laughable. When the Empire's scouts first encountered Earth, they had laughed. A few armed ships were nothing compared to the vast fleets they commanded. The humans were nothing more than ants to them, harmless and incapable of rising above their place in the universe. The leaders of the Empire gathered around a large holographic table in their Grand War Council room. Their laughter echoed through the chamber as they mocked humanity's attempts to develop spacefaring technology. What do they hope to achieve? One of them said with a smirk, "They are no match for the might of our fleets. Their weapons will barely scratch our ships." But Earth's leaders, though small in number and limited in resources, had something the Empire did not: determination. They had faced many challenges on their home planet, wars, disasters, and betrayals, but humanity always found a way to survive. What the Empire didn't understand was that Earth had learned from its mistakes. It had adapted, and the humans were beginning to push the boundaries of technology in ways that no one had anticipated. In the shadows of Earth's governments, a small group of brilliant scientists and military strategists worked tirelessly. They knew the Empire's judgment was coming. The first signs of an invasion had been detected: scout ships in orbit, strange signals from deep space. But even as the Empire prepared to strike, Earth's leaders held a secret. A plan had been set in motion, a secret weapon that no one, not even the Empire, could have foreseen. The Empire's High Council, meanwhile, brushed aside any warnings from their own scouts who had observed Earth's recent advancements. "They will never match our technology," they repeated, secure in their overwhelming power. Their ships were massive, each one capable of destroying entire planets. Their weapons were lethal, their tactics perfected over centuries. The humans' fledgling space program couldn't even hope to compete. But Earth's military commanders had a different perspective. They understood that they couldn't match the Empire's fleets in a straight fight, but they didn't need to. They just needed to survive long enough to reveal their true strength. The humans had been quietly building a fleet, one that combined their innovative spirit with a relentless drive to overcome the odds. It wasn't as grand as the Empire's, but it was built with purpose. On the eve of the Empire's invasion, Earth's leaders made a decision. They would not be passive victims. They would show the Empire that humanity could rise against them. But they also knew that the Empire's might would be overwhelming, and the odds were stacked against them. Earth's fleet was small, and many feared they wouldn't last long enough to strike a decisive blow. Yet, the humans had learned to adapt in ways no other empire could imagine. They had studied the Empire's tactics, understood their weaknesses, and found ways to exploit them. They knew that the Empire underestimated them, that in itself was a weapon. As the Empire's ships entered Earth's solar system, their commanders looked out across the stars with smug confidence. The sight of the human fleet, still a speck on the radar, was met with laughter. Earth's ships were no match for their massive dreadnoughts. They were no match for their firepower. The Empire was sure of it. But unbeknownst to them, the humans were ready. Earth's fleet, built with ingenuity, resilience, and an understanding of the enemy's tactics, was about to do something the Empire never expected: strike back with the fury of a force underestimated for far too long. The first moment of conflict, the first clash between the two forces, would change everything. As Earth's ships locked into position, ready to defend their world, there was a strange sense of calm. The humans had no delusions of grandeur. They were not foolish enough to think they could win easily. But they had one thing that the Empire lacked: hope and the willingness to fight against all odds. And as the first shots were fired, the Empire began to realize something that they never could have predicted. Humanity was not weak, and they had made a grave mistake underestimating this small, stubborn planet. The battle for Earth had just begun, and the Empire was about to discover just how powerful humanity could be. The first shot was fired from Earth's side, a small but highly calculated attack aimed at one of the Empire's outermost vessels. It wasn't a direct hit, but the laser beam, though weak by the Empire's standards, left a trail of smoke in the cold expanse of space. The blast was a signal, an unmistakable warning shot. The Empire's flagship, a towering dreadnought, its surface gleaming with Imperial insignia, looked down upon Earth's fleet with dismissive contempt. Its commander, General Sorix, stood with his arms crossed, watching the screens before him with a knowing smile. He had faced countless enemies, crushed entire civilizations, and yet he had no real fear of these humans. They were insignificant, no more than a brief nuisance in the grand scheme of things. "Let them play at war," General Sorix muttered. "They'll learn soon enough that defiance only brings death." He motioned for his fleet to move forward, his voice calm and authoritative. "Destroy them. No mercy." On Earth, the human commanders were watching the same fleet advance, but they were not afraid. Their fleet was small, outnumbered, and lacking in the kind of heavy weaponry that could truly rival the Empire. But there was something else that the humans had learned: the Empire's arrogance. For years, humans had studied their invaders. Every fleet movement, every tactic, every weakness had been analyzed. They had learned the Empire's patterns. They had mapped out their ships' vulnerable points, studied the gaps in their defense systems, and understood the strategic behaviors that the Empire used to control their enemies. The Empire's greatest flaw was their overconfidence, and Earth was about to exploit that weakness. As the Empire's ships closed in, Earth's fleet took a strategic position, out of the Empire's expected range. It was a clever maneuver, one that relied on misdirection and careful timing. The humans had prepared a series of surprise tactics, each one meant to frustrate and confuse the Empire, to prove that they were not the helpless prey they had been assumed to be. General Sorix looked out over his fleet, still unimpressed. "They think they can hide," he scoffed. "Let them waste their time. We will crush them in the end." But then something happened that even the general did not foresee. Earth's fleet, seemingly outmatched and vulnerable, moved in perfect synchronization, sending waves of firepower that struck at the heart of the Empire's outer fleet. It wasn't a force that could destroy the Empire's massive ships, but it was enough to cause damage, enough to draw their attention. A volley of laser fire hit one of the Empire's support ships, tearing through its hull. Another ship took a direct hit from an EMP pulse, temporarily disabling its weapons. These were just small victories, but they were enough to catch the Empire off guard. "How dare they?" General Sorix shouted. His voice rang out across the command deck, his expression now a mixture of anger and disbelief. "These fools have no idea what they're up against." But the damage had already been done. For the first time, the Empire's leaders began to feel uncertainty. This was not the quick and easy victory they had expected. Earth's fleet, though small, had inflicted enough damage to halt their advance, if only for a moment. Back on Earth, the leaders and commanders watched the battle unfold on massive screens. The tension in the air was thick as they prepared for the Empire's next move. They knew the battle was far from over, but it was a victory nonetheless. It proved that the Empire could be hurt, that they were not invincible. The humans had learned the Empire's weakness, and now the Empire was beginning to learn about humanity's strength. Every small victory, every shot fired, proved that Earth was no longer the weak, unassuming world it had been when the Empire first set its sights on them. They were now a force to be reckoned with, and the Empire had underestimated just how far the human spirit could stretch. But General Sorix wasn't done yet. He wasn't ready to admit defeat, not by a long shot. "All units, fire at will," he commanded, his eyes burning with fury. "We end this now." The Empire's massive dreadnoughts turned their weapons on Earth's fleet. They launched wave after wave of destructive energy. Each blast was powerful enough to obliterate Earth's ships with a single shot, and yet the humans kept fighting, their resolve strengthening with every attack. As the battle raged on, Earth's fleet held firm, proving that despite the odds, humanity's strength wasn't in their size or firepower. It was in their unwavering determination, their refusal to back down, and their ability to adapt. The first moment of doubt had now settled in the hearts of the Empire's leaders. What they had once viewed as a simple conquest was now beginning to look like a struggle. And the humans, for all their limitations, were showing them just how dangerous it could be to underestimate a species that had only just begun to fight back. The battle continued to rage across the cold void of space, each side throwing everything they had into the fray. The Empire, with its vast armada of dreadnoughts and heavily armed fleets, unleashed wave after wave of destruction. Yet, despite the overwhelming power of their forces, the humans had managed to hold their ground, pushing back with every inch they could. From the command center of Earth's fleet, Admiral Lara Hawk stood before the massive tactical display, her mind racing. The display was filled with swirling red markers, indicating the positions of the Empire's ships. But there were green markers as well, indicating the position of Earth's vessels. And in the midst of all this chaos, Earth was still standing, still fighting. "What's the status on the second wave of EMPs?" Admiral Hawk asked, her voice calm but determined. "Ready to launch, Admiral," came the reply from her operations officer. "We've calibrated the frequency to disrupt their command shift shields. Once we fire, they won't be able to retaliate for a few moments." "Do it," Hawk ordered. With a sharp command, the next wave of EMP pulses was launched. This time, the humans weren't aiming to cause major destruction. They were aiming to weaken the Empire's communication and defense systems, just enough to gain the upper hand. The Empire's ships, despite their technological superiority, now found themselves grappling with unexpected disruptions. Their shields flickered, their weapon systems malfunctioned, and for the briefest of moments, they were vulnerable. The Empire had underestimated humanity's ingenuity, but they were now paying the price. On the flagship, General Sorix gritted his teeth as he watched his ship struggle to regain control. "What is happening?" he barked at his crew. "Why aren't we able to make a decisive move?" One of his officers spoke up, her voice trembling. "Admiral, their EMP pulse. It's disabling our comms. Our shield systems are failing." "This is impossible," General Sorix hissed, fury building in his chest. How are they managing this? He had made one critical mistake. In his arrogance, he had assumed that Earth's fleet was nothing more than a scrap of resistance, easily crushed beneath the might of the Empire's power. But now, it was becoming clear that humanity had learned how to strike back, and they were doing it in ways the Empire couldn't have predicted. Back on Earth, Admiral Hawk watched the results unfold on her screen. The Empire's ships were now in disarray. Their communication channels were jammed, their shields were faltering, and for the first time in this battle, it seemed as though the tide was turning. "Good," Hawk muttered, her eyes narrowing. "Now we move in for the kill." With calculated precision, Earth's fleet began to close in on the Empire's weakened ships. The humans had taken their chance and seized it. They weren't fighting just for survival anymore. They were fighting to win. The Empire's fleet, once so sure of itself, was now being slowly but steadily pushed back. Their dreadnoughts, those massive symbols of imperial power, were no longer untouchable. They had vulnerabilities, and humanity had found them. As Earth's ships fired shot after shot, targeting weak points and exploiting the gaps in the Empire's defense, the very core of the Empire's strategy began to crack. In the chaos, one of Earth's smaller ships, a seemingly insignificant vessel in comparison to the Empire's colossal dreadnoughts, managed to land a direct hit on one of the Empire's largest command ships. The explosion was enormous, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Empire's fleet faltered once more. Admiral Hawke couldn't help but smile as she watched the devastating effect of the strike. "We're not just surviving anymore," she said quietly. "We're winning." But just as the human forces began to feel the momentum shift in their favor, a new threat emerged. A signal came from the heart of the Empire's fleet, a sudden surge in energy from one of their remaining dreadnoughts. It was a weapon unlike anything the humans had seen before, a weapon that could obliterate entire fleets with a single strike. General Sorix had one last card to play, and it was his ace in the hole. The Empire wasn't about to give up so easily. As the humans began to regroup, preparing for their next strike, the Empire unleashed its devastating counterattack. A colossal beam of pure energy shot from the heart of their dreadnought, carving a path of destruction toward Earth's fleet. "Brace for impact," Admiral Hawke shouted. The human commanders scrambled to activate every defense system available, but the sheer power of the Empire's weapon was overwhelming. For a brief moment, it seemed as though all hope might be lost. The battlefield was eerily silent for a moment, the calm before the storm, as both fleets took stock of their positions. Earth's ships, though battered, had gained a significant advantage. They had disrupted the Empire's communications, destabilized their shields, and pushed them into a corner. But Admiral Hawke knew better than to underestimate her enemy. The Empire had never been one to back down quietly, and now they were about to show their true strength. "Admiral," came the voice of her operations officer, breaking through her thoughts. "We're picking up a massive energy surge from the Empire's flagship. They're charging something big." Hawke's heart skipped a beat. She had anticipated retaliation. But this was different. The readings on the screen were unlike anything Earth had ever encountered. A weapon of this magnitude could change the entire course of the war in an instant. "All units, prepare for evasive maneuvers," Hawke ordered. "Activate all shields. Get ready to counterattack once we have a window." But as she spoke, the sheer force of the Empire's weapon became apparent. From the heart of their fleet, a blinding beam of pure energy surged forward, cutting through the void like a knife through butter. It was unlike any weapon humanity had ever encountered, a destructive force capable of wiping out entire fleets with a single blast. "Incoming." The warning alarms blared across the bridge. Hawke's fingers flew over the controls as she issued commands to activate the most advanced evasive tactics Earth's fleet had at their disposal. Ships maneuvered erratically, but despite their efforts, the Empire's weapon was too powerful, too precise. The beam tore through the first wave of Earth's defensive fleet, disintegrating ships in its wake, leaving nothing but debris and ashes. The screen flashed red with the losses, and for a split second, despair gripped the hearts of the human commanders. It was a devastating blow, one that should have broken them, one that should have ended the battle. The Empire had hit them hard, harder than they could have imagined. But Admiral Hawke refused to yield. "Don't lose focus," she shouted. "We've come too far to back down now. Brace yourselves for the counteroffensive. We're not finished yet." Her voice rang with unshakable resolve, pushing her fleet to continue the fight, to rally against the overwhelming power of the Empire. They had fought this far, and they were not about to let the Empire's arrogance be the end of them. As the dust settled from the blast, the human fleet regrouped, their numbers thinned but not broken. There was still hope. There was still a chance to fight back. "Sir, we've detected another anomaly," one of the crew members reported. "There's a weakness in the Empire's fleet. Their shields are failing again." Hawke narrowed her eyes. Despite their devastating weapon, the Empire was still vulnerable. The damage to their fleet, combined with the loss of critical command ships, was taking its toll. They were desperate, but they still had a massive fleet at their disposal, and their weapon was still a major threat. "Get me a direct line to the fleet commanders," Hawk ordered. "We need to exploit this weakness and hit them with everything we've got." The tension in the air was palpable as Earth's fleet prepared for its next strike. The Empire had thrown everything they had at humanity, but the humans had proven that they were not as weak as the Empire had thought. The balance of power was shifting once more, but this was no time for complacency. The next move would decide everything. As Hawk watched the enemy fleet through the tactical display, she knew they had one shot at this. If they missed, they would face certain destruction. If they succeeded, however, the Empire would know just how dangerous humanity could be. "All units, prepare to fire," she ordered, her voice steady. "Target their weakened command ships. We take them out now, or we lose everything." Earth's fleet, now acting with precision and unity, surged forward. Every ship in their fleet locked onto the Empire's vulnerable targets, aiming to destroy the command ships and cripple the Empire's ability to respond. The battle was far from over, but the tides had turned. Humanity had proven they were not easily defeated, no matter how powerful the enemy. And now, as they moved in for the kill, they knew that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. General Sorix watched in disbelief as his fleet struggled to regroup after the devastating weapon blast. His once immense empire, a beacon of invincibility, was faltering. Ships that had once been untouchable were now being overwhelmed by humanity's relentless drive. But he refused to let it end like this. He couldn't afford to lose. Not to these so-called primitive humans. "Get me a direct line to the Emperor," Sorix growled, his mind racing for a solution. "We need reinforcements. We need everything we have left." The weight of the situation was crushing. The Empire's arrogance had led them to underestimate the humans, and now they were paying the price. It was a mistake they couldn't undo. They were on the brink of losing everything. The tension was thick in the air. The hum of the engines and the steady beeping of monitors filled the bridge of the flagship, each sound a reminder of the looming battle ahead. Admiral Hawk stood at the helm, staring at the holographic display before her. The Empire was still reeling, their arrogance shattered, their fleet broken but not yet defeated. It was now or never, the final push to end this war. "Report," she ordered, her voice sharp but controlled. "We've secured the targeting data, Admiral," her operations officer responded, his eyes scanning the screen. "The command ships are heavily damaged, but there's still a handful of intact vessels. They're organizing their forces for a last stand. They'll be ready to fire in 2 minutes." Hawk's gaze hardened. The Empire was preparing to launch their most devastating weapon yet, their final attempt to crush humanity's resistance. She knew that a single misstep could lead to the end of Earth's fleet. She couldn't afford to hesitate. "We don't have 2 minutes," Hawk muttered to herself, but her voice remained steady. "Prepare all ships for full assault. We go in full force now. The moment we see an opening, we strike." On the view screen, the Empire's flagships loomed large. The sleek, menacing shapes of their ships were lined up in formation, ready to unleash destruction. But something was different now. The Empire had been taken by surprise, and their once impenetrable defense seemed a little more vulnerable. Humanity had landed its blows, and now they would see if they could finish the job. "Admiral," said one of her commanders, her voice tight with urgency, "we've lost contact with the rear fleet. Their systems are down. It's possible they were hit by the Empire's weapon before we could get the reinforcements in." Hawk nodded grimly. The casualties had been mounting, but they were too far into this fight to turn back now. Every ship left, every human still standing, had to push forward. She had to believe they could do this. "Keep your stations," she ordered firmly. "Every ship, every fighter, every resource counts now. We've come too far to fall short." The fleet moved out in perfect synchrony. The familiar vibrations of the engines as the ships fired their thrusters sent a shiver through Hawk, but she stood firm. Her hands gripped the controls, ready for whatever came next. "Now," she commanded. The human fleet surged forward, weapons charging, shields up, Every officer and crew member laser-focused on their task. The Empire's fleet fired first, a salvo of energy blasts that lit up the void like stars exploding. But this time, the human fleet had learned from their earlier mistakes. Evasive maneuvers, shield reinforcements, and laser countermeasures were activated in perfect coordination. The first few blasts missed, but one struck home. The shield of Hawk's flagship flared as the impact reverberated through the ship, but it held. She gritted her teeth. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about delivering the final blow. "Return fire," she shouted. The human ships unleashed a barrage of their own. Missiles, plasma beams, and electromagnetic pulses lit up the dark expanse. Their target, the heart of the Empire's fleet, the command ships that controlled everything. If they could cripple those, the Empire's remaining forces would collapse. The battle raged with brutal intensity, every strike a deadly game of cat and mouse. But Earth's fleet was relentless. The Empire had underestimated the tenacity of humanity, and now they were paying the price. "Admiral," came the voice of a young lieutenant, "the command ships are vulnerable. We've disabled their primary defenses. This is our chance." Hawk's heart pounded as she gave the order. "All ships, full charge. Take them down now." The human fleet moved in, cutting through the remnants of the Empire's defenses like a hot knife through butter. They targeted the heart of the Empire's operation, the command ships. Blasts from their weapons rocked the enemy's vessels, tearing apart vital systems, leaving the once proud Empire floundering. But then, a final, terrifying reality dawned upon them. The Empire was not going down quietly. Desperation rippled through their ranks as they tried one last attempt to retaliate, launching every weapon they had left in a last-ditch effort to wipe out Earth's fleet. The beam fired from the Empire's flagship was the largest yet, a massive wall of destructive energy aimed directly at Earth's flagship. The crew braced for impact, knowing that if the shot landed, they would be obliterated. But Admiral Hawk didn't flinch. With a coolness that surprised even her, she gave the order to activate their secret weapon, a pulse that had been in development for months, designed to counteract the Empire's most powerful attacks. The pulse fired from Earth's flagship just in time, meeting the Empire's blast head-on. The collision of energy caused an explosion of light and sound that rocked the very fabric of space. The force was so intense that it temporarily knocked both fleets off course, and the entire battlefield seemed to fall into a temporary haze of chaos. When the smoke cleared, both fleets were battered. Earth had lost a significant portion of its ships, but they had struck at the heart of the Empire's forces. The Empire, meanwhile, had lost its final weapon and most of its command fleet. "Admiral, we did it," one of her officers whispered in disbelief. But Hawk's face remained impassive. "This isn't over yet," she said quietly. "We've won a battle, but the war is still ongoing." In the aftermath of the devastating battle, a deep silence fell over the vastness of space. The wreckage of shattered ships drifted in the cold emptiness, a testament to the ferocity of the conflict. Earth's fleet had claimed victory, but at a heavy cost. The damage was extensive, and the loss of so many good men and women weighed heavily on Admiral Hawk's heart. On the bridge of the flagship, the crew worked tirelessly to assess the damage and stabilize the ship. Hawk's eyes, though tired and worn, remained fixed on the view screen, where the remains of the Empire's fleet hung in the void. They had been reduced to nothing more than floating debris, yet somewhere amidst the destruction, the last remnants of the Empire's strength remained, its leaders. Hawk stood alone for a moment, lost in thought. The final strike had crippled the Empire, but it had not been enough to destroy their resolve. They were a proud species, unwilling to surrender, even when defeat was certain. The arrogance that had once marked their reign had now given way to something else. Desperation. "Admiral," a voice broke through her thoughts. It was her communications officer. "We've intercepted a transmission from the Empire's last remaining command ship. They're asking for a truce." Hawk turned sharply. "A truce? After everything they'd done. Her voice was cold, full of disbelief. The officer hesitated, then continued. They've requested a meeting, a chance to negotiate terms. They're offering the surrender of their remaining fleet in exchange for their lives. Hawk's expression hardened. The audacity of it. The leaders of the Empire had scorned humanity for so long, mocking them and underestimating their power. And now, when faced with the reality of their own destruction, they sought mercy. Do they truly believe we'll entertain this? Hawk muttered, her anger barely contained. She knew the answer. The Empire's pride had been shattered, but they weren't ready to admit total defeat. They were still clinging to the hope that they could buy their lives at the cost of a few words. But Hawk knew better. She had seen firsthand the lengths to which they would go to preserve their power. Prepare the fleet for a meeting, she ordered, her voice icy. Let them think they have a chance, but this will be their final mistake. The Empire's remaining command ship, a once grand vessel now showing signs of severe damage, drifted toward Earth's flagship under the watchful eyes of both sides. The stark contrast between the two ships was glaring. The Empire's vessel, now reduced to a shadow of its former glory, and Earth's fleet, battered but resolute, exuding an unyielding determination. Admiral Hawk stood at the center of the bridge, her crew silent as they awaited the outcome of this tense moment. The screens flickered as the Empire's emissary finally appeared, a figure in a dark uniform, standing at the center of a devastated command room. Admiral Hawk. The voice of the emissary crackled through the comms, weak but defiant. You have won, but at great cost. The Empire has underestimated your strength, but we offer you a chance to end this without further bloodshed. Spare the remnants of our fleet, and we will comply with your demands. The galaxy can return to peace. Hawk's eyes narrowed, her grip tightening on the arm of her chair. Peace. After all the Empire had done, after all the innocent lives they had destroyed, now they sought peace. Her voice, when it came, was calm but filled with a quiet fury. You don't get to decide when this ends. You've played the game, and now you will face the consequences. Your arrogance and pride have cost the lives of countless beings. Your empire is finished. The emissary's eyes flickered with something, perhaps disbelief, or perhaps the first glimmer of fear. You don't understand, he said, voice shaking. If you destroy us, it will be the end of everything. The galaxy needs the Empire. The galaxy doesn't need you, Hawk interrupted, her voice unyielding. You think you hold the balance of power, but all you've done is sow chaos and destruction. Humanity has proven that we will stand against whatever threats you throw at us. You can beg for mercy, but there will be no more deals. The emissary fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Hawk knew the war wasn't over. There were still some pockets of resistance, some ships that might still be loyal to the Empire's cause. But the leaders, the ones who had led the Empire to this point, were finished. I think you should prepare for what's coming next, Hawk added coldly. Your choice to mock humanity, to underestimate us, has sealed your fate. You'll be remembered, not as conquerors, but as the ones who tried to crush a species that would never back down. The transmission was cut abruptly, leaving only the hum of the ship's systems behind. The battle was far from over, but Hawk knew one thing with certainty. The tide had fully turned in humanity's favor. As the final remnants of the Empire's fleet scattered into the void, Earth's forces were left standing victorious. The message was clear. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The fight wasn't over, but the Empire's leaders would never again hold the same power they once did. Earth had shown them that when it came to survival, no force in the galaxy could stand against them. Admiral Hawk stood alone on the bridge, staring out into the vast expanse of space. The stars were still out there, waiting, but Earth had made its mark. And no matter what came next, they would never forget the price the Empire had paid for underestimating humanity. The remnants of the once mighty Galactic Empire were scattered across the battlefield like the shattered pieces of a broken dream. Their warships drifted lifelessly, their once glowing engines now dimmed, their weapons silenced. Admiral Hawk stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, her eyes watching the chaotic remnants of the battle unfold on the holographic display before her. The quiet after the storm was eerie, as though the entire galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for the final moment. "We've broken their lines," Admiral reported her first officer, Lieutenant Parker. His voice was steady, but there was a noticeable fatigue beneath it. It had been hours since the last strike, and while the battle was nearly won, the war had taken a toll on everyone aboard. Hawk nodded, her face expressionless. "Yes, but the real question is, will they surrender, or are they too proud to accept defeat?" The Empire had been ruthless, relentless in their pursuit of domination. But humanity had proven something far more dangerous to the galactic powers. Humans were not so easily broken. And now, the remnants of the Empire were left to decide whether they would continue to resist or finally face the inevitable consequences of their arrogance. A communication signal flickered on her terminal, drawing her attention. It was from the Imperial fleet, their leadership broken and desperate. Hawk stood up straight, her gaze hardening as the transmission came through. The image on the screen was a gaunt-looking Imperial general, his uniform torn and bloodied. His eyes, once filled with confidence, now held nothing but desperation. "Admiral Hawk," the general began, his voice weak but steady. We offer our surrender. Please, end this madness. You've proven your strength. You've shown us the cost of our arrogance." Hawk's heart remained cold as she listened. She had expected this. The Empire, faced with their destruction, was ready to beg for mercy. But there would be no easy answers. The fight had taken too much from them, and humanity had learned a painful lesson about the cost of war. "You speak of mercy," Hawk said, her voice unwavering. "But what mercy did you show the countless worlds you destroyed? The lives you wiped out without a second thought? The empire built on arrogance and suffering can't simply be forgiven because you've had a taste of your own destruction." The general's face twitched, as though he was struggling to find the right words. But the battle was over, and there was no longer room for negotiation. Humanity had paid too high a price to be lenient now. "We don't ask for forgiveness," the general said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We only ask for a chance to rebuild, for our people to survive." Hawk took a deep breath, weighing his words. She knew what the Empire had done, how they had enslaved, destroyed, and killed countless innocent lives. Their reign of terror had been long, and they had grown used to their power. Now they were broken, humbled, and desperate. But humanity had to decide what kind of future they wanted. Were they to be defined by revenge and anger, or would they rise above it? The question was difficult, but the answer was clear in Hawk's mind. "You and your people have destroyed too much," she said, her voice cold and firm. "There will be no peace unless you atone for what you've done. We will spare the lives of those who want to rebuild, but your empire will cease to exist. The power you once held will be dismantled, and your reign of terror will end today." The general nodded, knowing that there was no arguing further. His people had no choice but to accept the consequences of their actions. "Understood, Admiral," he said quietly. "We'll comply." The transmission cut out, and silence descended upon the bridge. The crew members exchanged looks, some of them relieved, others uneasy. The war was over, but the true work had only just begun. Rebuilding the galaxy, healing the wounds of countless civilizations, and ensuring that such a war would never happen again would take years, decades, perhaps. Hawk looked out at the stars beyond the viewports. The Empire had fallen, but there was no joy in their victory. Earth had won the war, but the cost was heavy. The galaxy would remember this moment, not as a triumph, but as a somber reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of humility. "Set course for Earth," she said, her voice steady. "We have much work to do." As the fleet made its way home, the crew knew that their victory was not one of celebration, but of survival. Humanity had proven that they were not to be underestimated, But the true test now was whether they could build a lasting peace from the ashes of war. The galaxy had seen their strength, and now it would remember the price humanity had paid to ensure its future.